on this episode of the Clip Service Podcast, Offseason Archives. We're back, guys. It's been a little while since we talked last, but we are back. We want to break down some Clipper chatter, some off-season chatter. I know that the full off-season hasn't started yet, but it has for the Clippers. So there's been no shortage of rumors and stuff like that. We're going to break down that for you. And then, contrary to what a lot of media outlets are saying, this playoff run for both the Thunder and the Pacers in this final series has been really, really exciting. So much so that we want to break that down a little bit and kind of talk about how the fact that, these young teams are starting to be like the norm in the league, which is kind of exciting. So we're going to break all that down and kind of relate it back to the Clippers, but just some casual talk here for you guys. So without further ado, let's make it happen.
What's up, Clipper Nation?
We're back.
Welcome to the Clip Service Podcast. Back on this lovely Monday in the middle of the finals, which we're going to dive right into. But before that, please make sure to find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Deezer, Amazon Music, and YouTube. And you can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at Clip Service Pod. My name's Rola, and this is my co-host, Nick. Let's get right into it.
Let's get right into it indeed, guys. Before we talk about this finals series, which, like I said, I've really enjoyed. As you guys know on this podcast, I'm a big old Halliburton stan. So I'm enjoying watching him cook. This has been a generational run for the young fella. And obviously Shai won MVP. I don't think we talked about that last time that we were together. So congrats to the Clipper legend, Shai Gilgeous, for winning MVP. Completely deserved. Has had probably the best singular season overall from front to back since 2016 Steph, when he won unanimous MVP and won the championship that year. Or no, he did not win the championship that year, right?
He lost
the
in
Cavs.
The final game
Yeah.
Of the season.
Still a great year for him, but Shai's had that kind of year, and both the teams that are in the finals right now deserve to be in the finals. And I don't know why the discourse, we'll talk about it in a bit, but I do not understand why the discourse is that this is going to be a boring finals or that, ratings are down. I still don't understand that discussion, but we will break that down shortly. But first, we're going to talk about the team that we cover, guys, the Los Angeles Clippers. We know that it's been a little while, so we got to get you got your Clipper fix. So I want to start this off, Rola. We've talked about it on the last episode. It seems pretty likely that the Clippers are going to try and run it back in some capacity next season. I know that's not what Rola wants. It's not really what I want either, but it's the cards that were dealt. Clippers don't own their draft picks until I think 2028 or something like that. We got a pick swap. Unfortunately, I have a pick swap with the Thunder, so the Clippers are picking 30th in this draft, first round. They also have the 51st pick, but it's gonna be difficult for the Clippers to really fully lean into the rebuild until about 2026, 27, or 27, 28.
Can I ask you a quick question before we get into this?
No.
Well, I'm going to anyways.
Okay.
Quick question. And this is just a thought I've had recently. Steve Ballmer has been everything to the Clippers franchise. Obviously, knowing our history and our history with our previous owner, he who shall not be named.
Sure, Lord Voldemort.
Lord Voldemort. Steve Ballmer has been a 180 in terms of an owner that cares and an owner that's willing to, kind of fork over the cash and get the Clippers what they deserve. But would it be too critical of me to say or to ask that Steve Ballmer might be a little bit too involved in the Clippers, because to me, the fact that we are not going into a rebuild kind of just doesn't make sense to me from a basketball perspective. And it seems like the reason why we keep doing this is for business purposes. Would you say the same, or would you? Does that?
Sorry, Rola,
question
you're
kind of?
cutting out a little bit on.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
You're cutting out a little bit on my end, guys. I don't know what this is going to sound like to the viewers at home, but you are sounding pretty droidish right now.
Oh, do you want to you want to pause and see if we can?
Guys, we're gonna take
Yeah,
a quick
we'll
break.
be right back.
Gonna get situated here. Give us 1 second. We will be right back. All right, guys, we're back. We're so sorry about that. But it's, if I remember correctly, Rola's point before we took our break for technical difficulties was that Steve Ballmer should be more involved or less involved.
Yeah.
Because it seems like the decisions that are being made by the Clippers front office are business driven as opposed to like team success from like an actual basketball standpoint.
Correct.
My rebuttal to that would be I actually think that I do think that some of this falls on Steve Ballmer because, at the end of the day, your owner's the one that's calling all the shots for the direction of your team. I don't. There's been a lot of good things that Lawrence Frank has done, his tenure as the Clippers, running the Clippers front office. But there's been some things that I've really, had a lot of criticism for. But I think that, Ballmer deserves to share that blame. Mm-hmm. I think that Ballmer's not a basketball mind first. He's a businessman.
Right.
And I think that Ballmer's a little bit too hands off. I think Ballmer kind of... Yeah, I think Ballmer runs the organization the way that he would run a company, where he has people in positions of power that he trusts to make the decision and lets them do, I think, Ty Lue's been a coach for a while for the Clippers. Lawrence Frank has been the GM for a while. Like, I don't think that Steve Ballmer likes change. And I think that a big part of that is because he trusts the front office and the coaching staff and everything that he has right now. And whether that's good or that's bad, that's all subjective. But
yeah,
someone that's kind of the polar opposite of that would be like Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban is very hands-on. Like, Mark Cuban was making, he was behind the scenes for a lot of like trade decisions for the Mavericks, and
mm-hmm.
He had a really close relationship with a lot of the players, and so I don't know. I think that Steve Ballmer is a little bit more hands off in my personal opinion, but whether or not that's true or not, I do agree with you to a point that that there is a little bit of and Ballmer's been a great owner, governor, chairman, especially if we're comparing it to Donald Sterling. He cares. He's really invested in this team. Yeah. He pays it forward, for the city of LA. He's been great from that regard. But I do think that there has been a level of like we're gonna prioritize. This team is a business, and we want to put butts in seats and stuff like that, and I get that. But I would like maybe some tougher decisions from the front office. And Ballmer has a hand in that.
Tough question, tough decision.
Okay.
So in these past playoffs, this is the first. Is this our first? No, this is our second episode after we lost the Nuggets, right?
Yes.
So I didn't really have this thought back then, but follow-up question to that is, so we lost to a Nuggets team who, a few weeks before had fired both their general manager and their coach, who had won a championship 3 years ago. So with the NBA, I feel like this current NBA, I feel like a lot of coaches are on the hot seat. I'm wondering how and why hasn't Ty Lue been on the hot seat? If someone like Mike Malone, who's won a championship as recently as 2 years ago, and then coached a team to a better record than the Clippers even had this year.
It was a dead even record. It was just tiebreakers.
Yeah,
That's the
but they
reason.
still were they still not only were the level above us, but they beat us in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But that was Mike Malone's system, right? So I'm wondering how in the world is Ty Lue how is he not in a hot seat? I feel like he's been losing and kind of been. No, Clippers haven't really done anything with him as the head coach, and it kind of feels like there are coaches that are more successful than him currently that are in the hot seat. You look at Mike Budenholzer, who's won a championship in the last five? That was like 5 years ago. You got Mike Malone, who won a championship 2-3 years ago, and we've got Ty Lue, who has been the coach in that entire time span, who hasn't really done anything in the playoffs. And I'm kind of wondering, like, that's what I mean by kind of feels like things are fueled by business decisions rather than basketball decisions, because a lot of these teams are switching up things, switching up their coaches, switching up their GMs, switching up their players, their team, and it feels like we've been stagnant I've been harping on this for a while, but I don't know. It just feels like the Clippers as a total package have been kind of stagnant, looking to make as much money as possible, trying to keep Kawhi, keep stars, James Harden, keep stars there, try to get people to come to the games. And, I get it. Intuit Dome is new and we're trying to, hype up the stadium and everything. But I think the best way to hype up a stadium is by winning a championship. And I just feel like we're not, that's not our number one goal right now, personally.
Yeah, I think, I disagree in the fact that I do think that the Clippers' number one goal is to win a championship. It's the process that the Clippers are taking that's very subjective. But you make really good points. And as I said last episode, there's not really any clear cut or right way to go about this thing, because there's a lot of questions and a lot of questions that don't have any answers with the Clippers right now. And I think with the coaching thing, the NBA coach, specifically the NBA coach, has become like the most unrewarding job in sports nowadays. I mean, I don't really believe in Tom Thibodeau. So from a bias standpoint, I understand why he got fired. But I mean, it seems a little bit puzzling why he got fired. I think with Malone and oh my God, what is their GM's name?
I don't know.
Calvin Booth. Calvin Booth and Malone both got fired. From what I understand, the reason why they got fired is because those two couldn't get along. They had very fundamentally different ideas of what success was for the team. Calvin Booth wanted to play younger guys. He was a big Julian Strawther fan, whereas Mike Malone was playing Russell Westbrook a little bit too much, from what I understood, and he was kind of favoring the older guys. So I think the reason why both of those guys got fired, and the fact that both of them got fired at the same time, was that they were probably given an ultimatum: if you guys don't figure it out, and if you guys don't start seeing eye to eye, we're going to fire you both. And I think that's why that they got fired. With Budenholzer, it's very clear that the Suns completely, like Budenholzer completely lost that Suns locker room. I mean, I have not seen a team more disjointed.
What about from the Bucks?
From the Bucks? Oh, when he got fired from the Bucks? That was so he got fired, and then they brought in Adrian Griffin, and then they fired Adrian Griffin for no reason to bring in Doc Rivers. That to me just seems like front office malpractice. I mean, just bringing in Doc Rivers in general seems like malpractice.
I don't know why they would do that. I genuinely
so, but the point being, I do think that there's something to be said about a team that trusts a coach for a long period of time, because I think that a coach, an NBA coach, doesn't do as much as we think as fans, but shouldn't be counted on for as much blame. Like, it's a weird thing. Like, I think that there's a very fine line between what makes a really good coach a good coach and what makes a coach, fireable, what puts them in the hot
Yeah.
seat.
Yeah.
And I think continuity is something that, in a lot of ways, goes in a franchise's favor because at the very least you have you have like this familiar face in the locker room. Whereas if you have all this turnaround, it's very hard for players to kind of like buy into a culture. So
But
it's
I
it's,
don't
it's a
think
whole.
who's the I feel like not many teams have long tenured coaches these days. I feel like the only person that comes to mind is Steve Kerr. I
Oh,
don't
you got
like
Steve. Yeah, you got Steve Kerr. You have, I mean, before he got fired, you had Mike Malone. Um,
yeah.
is
I
Billy
feel like
Donovan
it's
still the is Billy Donovan still the coach of? No, he's not. He's not still the
no.
coach of the Bulls. I can't. Why am I drawing a
I
blank?
I mean I think like I think in the today's NBA you gotta be willing to move pieces. And you know, we're seeing this with the Mavs. And everyone talks shit on them. They fired Rick Carlisle. They got rid of Luca. I mean, obviously Rick Carlisle is now in the finals with the Pacers, but the Pacers picked up a new coach that they felt like could bring something new to the team. Like, teams are I feel like are willing to switch it up and kind of start fresh or start with a fresh mind or start with like something new. And I just feel like the Clippers haven't really done that in recent years. I mean, this year was probably the biggest refresh of like play style, players on the Clippers, and that type of vibe. And even though we lost in the first round, I think we saw something like about the Clippers. So I just don't think that it's a bad thing to want to change things up. I mean, Ty Lue might be a great, fantastic coach, but maybe his ideas just don't work for the Clippers currently, and maybe we need a fresh mind. You know what I mean? I just think that something's got to change, and I just feel like the Clippers front office or the ownership are afraid of losing fans due to getting rid of a Kawhi, getting rid of a James Harden, getting rid of a Ty Lue, getting rid of a Lawrence Frank, just because that's what Clippers fans are used to, and they're afraid of like a Mavs situation. But I mean, when you look at the Mavs today, they have the number one pick. Like, are they really in that bad of a position? And obviously, there's rigging, obviously, but
Yeah,
are they really
something's
in
going
that?
on there.
There's something going on, but like they're not. They're probably might be in a better position in like 2-3 years than they were last year. You know what I mean? So
Somehow,
it's
yeah, somehow.
somehow, but it's just like I don't know. I just think that the Clippers could do something different, personally.
And
And I've
that's
been harping
totally
on
and
that.
that no and that's totally fair. Um, like I said, normally I would disagree with you, Rola, on certain things, but I do think that the Clippers are at this crossroads to where I think that the Clippers could go, and it almost has me feeling positive because there's a lot of different ways the Clippers can go,
Yeah.
and none of them is truly the wrong decision. I think
Hmm.
because like the possibilities at this point are kind of endless for the Clippers. The Clippers can. The one thing that I don't want the Clippers to, and I'm going to use this to segue into what we're going to talk about next, but
Hmm.
the one thing that I don't want the Clippers to do is hold any contracts past this, from what we understand, this deadline to where the Clippers are going to start to try and retool and rebuild, which will be either the following this next offseason or the following offseason, when every contract pretty much that we have except for Ivica Zubats and maybe some of our rookies, Cam Christie and stuff like that, are off the
Hmm.
books. Um, but so that brings me to my next point. Um, the Clippers have a lot of expiring contracts. One of them, although he's due for an extension, Norman Powell,
Hmm.
who I feel in my heart of hearts is probably going to get moved this offseason.
Yeah.
Norm was great this season, had what I feel should have been an all-star season.
I
Um,
agree.
was a huge reason why the Clippers were in position to really be successful in the playoffs.
Hmm.
But he when he came back from his injury, right before the playoffs, he really kind of didn't live up to expectations. And I think he makes over $20 million a year in this one more year on his contract, I believe. So it's a movable contract. My guess is that he's moved, and what I'm hearing from, different media outlets and stuff like this is that there are a couple people that the Clippers are considering or looking at. One of those being Jrue Holiday, which Law Murray talked about it, I believe, on somebody's podcast. Was saying that was kind of just a smokescreen. It was kind of just talk. There wasn't a lot of weight to that. But another figure that has recently come up in Clippers discussions over the course of the last couple of days has been a guy that is being talked about in just about every trade scenario there is out there, and that is Kevin Durant, who is very clearly disgruntled with the Suns, and he's bounced around from several different teams. He has one more year in his contract. I believe it's something like a little bit north of $51 million, which is a lot, but he has one more year in his contract, and that's his upcoming year, and then he's an unrestricted free agent. Should the Clippers, my question to you, Rola, and I already know the answer, but should the Clippers make a trade for Kevin Durant for 1 year? Because the Clippers are going to try and run it back, most likely. Going to try and run it back in some way.
Okay.
Should the Clippers try and get a Kevin Durant rental for 1 year, give it everything they got, and then the following year probably hit rebuild? Or the year after?
No.
And why is that?
That's an easy one. No. That might be the worst move we could make this offseason. Truly.
Okay. I kind of agree with you, but I want to hear your...
Well, my take is, one, Kevin Durant is old, and old for the NBA, not old in person. He's what, like 35?
Yeah,
maybe? Right. We already have an older player in Kawhi Leonard. We already have an older secondary player in James Harden. And I think that adding another older, injury-prone player who needs the ball in his hands the way Kevin Durant would need to alongside Kawhi, I just don't think it's something that would work out. I don't think that it's a move you want to make, and I honestly just don't think that that's what's gonna win in the NBA, in this current NBA. We don't see older type players other than maybe Steph Curry was the last person to, he won the chip that year, but the last person to really go deep in the playoffs as like an elder statesman of the NBA. This is a young man's game going forward, and I think that us trading for Kevin Durant is such a gamble that might not even work out. If we get a Kevin Durant and lose all our smaller pieces, I think we still get roasted and toasted and burned by the OKC Thunder in 6 games. Maybe.
Clippers are coming out of that well done.
Well done, bro. Maybe we could win 2 games if Kawhi goes off and Kevin Durant goes off. We already know James Harden is going to fucking collapse. We saw it this year. So I'm not even going to speak on him. But okay. I just think that if that situation came to, we'd get run out of the building, and that's not something that I think would work for the Clippers. And honestly, if that did happen, that would pretty much prove my case in that, business decisions are being made for the Clippers rather than basketball decisions.
I would agree with you if Kevin Durant had a contract that ran, several years. My thing with the Kevin Durant trade, and I agree with you for the most part. I love Kevin Durant. One of my favorites, over the course of his career, one of the greatest scorers of all time. Mm-hmm. Kind of the first unicorn. But he's getting up there. He's definitely declined a little bit. I would disagree with you, or I would agree with you for the most part. If he, like I said, if he had a couple years left in his contract, in a perfect situation, if the Clippers did make a Kevin Durant trade and did a 1-year deal, because the Clippers are going to try and run it back, like I said, or Clippers are most likely going to try and run it back or compete with the large majority of who they have right now. 1 more year or 2 more years, I don't know. Hopefully 1 more year. If it doesn't work out, you let Kevin Durant walk, wash your hands of the whole situation. Mm-hmm. If the Clippers are able to acquire Kevin Durant for Norman Powell, let's just say for the sake of argument, Norman Powell, Amir Coffey, Kobe Brown, and a couple seconds.
Mm-hmm.
If his asking price is that low, I'm okay with it.
It's not going to be that low, dude. It can't be.
It probably isn't. The one thing that I am vehemently against is if the Clippers include any, and I literally mean any, of their first round picks in a theoretical trade for Kevin Durant. There are a couple things that I truly believe, regardless of what the Clippers decide to do this offseason, are untouchable. And that's Ivica Zubats,
Mm-hmm.
any first round pick. And this is going to sound crazy, but personally, I think that there are two guys that are pretty close to untouchable. The Kawhi and James situation, to me, it's like for the right asking price, we'll talk about it. But Nico Batum, because why would you trade away a guy that wants to retire as a Clipper? He's not getting paid a lot of money. It would be a slap in the face if we traded Nico for nothing.
Yeah.
It really would be.
Mm-hmm.
And Derek Jones Jr.
Oh, I kind of like that.
I really, really, truly think that Derek Jones Jr. has been one of Lawrence Frank's shining moments in the last couple of years. Signing him for, I think it was something like 3 years, $30 million or something like that. Mm-hmm. He was great during the regular season. He gives the Clippers a vertical lob threat. Yeah. He shot a career high from three this year, and he's young. I mean, younger. He's 28, 27. Like, to me, Derek Jones is. I truly think that Derek Jones is as close to untouchable as it gets, just because his value to paycheck ratio, he exceeds what he's getting paid this season and the next two. So, but other than that, for the right asking price, I wouldn't mind Kevin Durant. And but the Clippers need to be, like you said, Rola, they need to make those tough decisions. And if the Kevin Durant thing, if the Clippers make a trade for Kevin Durant and it doesn't work out, they need to cut bait, let him walk. Do not fall for the,
back.
Yeah, exactly. Do not fall for the run it back thing. I think if you're going to try and compete for a championship next year, sure, use him as a rental. And if it doesn't work out, you let him walk and you start the rebuild that a lot of Clipper fans are waiting for. But yeah, I mean, all of that kind of encapsulates the discussion of the fact that something that you agree with, Rola, the league has become a young man's league. It's really hard for a team like the Clippers, who I believe are the oldest team in the NBA this season. It's really hard for teams like that to compete nowadays. I mean, you don't have to have this stacked, star-studded, big three, big four team anymore. It's becoming, I mean, you look at the Pacers, you have Halliburton, who's very clearly the leader on this team. You got Siakam, who's a champion, fantastic player. And then around him, you got guys like Miles Turner, who are very good, and guys that Andrew Nembhard, who's had a career year. Mm-hmm. But it's very much a team-based thing. And you look at the Thunder, and it's kind of a similar way. Like, the Thunder have built from the ground up. Jalen Williams, draft pick. Chet Holmgren, draft pick. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, they traded for him the year after his rookie season. So, and they all kind of play team basketball, and they're all very young. They'll have a ton of energy. It has become a young man's game. I mean, you look at the two teams that were just eliminated. You have the Knicks, who are pretty young, and you have the Timberwolves, who are pretty young.
Yep.
So
when you look at a lot of these teams, and I think this is why I personally chose the OKC Thunder to win the chip this year. I thought that they were maybe the Celtics before they lost Jason Tatum. But I thought the OKC Thunder was the only team in that tier one level of teams. And I think that the formula or blueprint to a championship team currently is a young team that has a painful loss or has gotten that experience of losing to a veteran team. And, the Pacers last year, they lost to the Celtics in the Eastern Conference semis, and then OKC lost to the Mavs in the Western Conference semis, I believe. Was it the
Yeah,
yeah.
I
So
believe so.
and seeing those teams come back the very next year and be in the finals, I think you got to be young. I think you got to learn a lesson. I think the Timberwolves learned a lesson this season, and I think you got to have that hustle and got to have that want to win. I don't think that if OKC hadn't had that loss last year, I think they would have lost the series to the Nuggets this year. I mean, I think that mental fortitude that comes with losing in a way that is almost like a lesson, I
Sure,
think is
especially for a
very
young
important.
team.
Exactly. I think is very important. And to me, I feel like that's the formula going forward. Obviously everyone always chooses against a young team when it comes to the playoffs basketball. But like I was saying, or like you said, this is a young man's game, and we no longer see those veteran teams that are like definitely going to win. Those veteran players that are like, oh, he has the experience. He's definitely going to pick apart another team. Like another team can, a younger team can bridge that gap by hustling, by wanting it more, by kind of understanding like, yeah, Jokic has that experience, but I'm going to literally out hustle him, outwork him to beat him. And that was kind of OKC's plan. And I think when you saw that game 7, you saw obviously Aaron Gordon was injured, but you saw OKC just straight up have way more energy and want it way more than the Nuggets did. And I feel like that's what you got to do these days. And I think that we see a lot of teams trying to build towards that. I can't remember if I said this before, like off podcast, but you know, I you know the Pacers, or who I forgot who said it on the Pacers.
Said what?
I'm blanking on his name. Who's the center on the Pacers?
Miles Turner.
Miles Turner. Miles Turner was saying like we're seeing the end of the big three era, LeBron, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh era of where teams are trying to build around three like stars with a superstar. Now it's more of you got one, superstar, and the rest of the team are just hustlers, guys who can shoot, guys who want to win, and guys who play hard and can do multiple things and know their role. And I think with OKC, very much so, you have a lot of guys that just know what they're supposed to do. And you see that with the Pacers. I mean, people have been hating on Tyrese Halliburton, saying he's not a superstar because he doesn't score 30 points a game. And I was watching First Take the other day, and Marcus Morris and Markieff Morris, the Morris twins, were on, and they were saying Halliburton is a superstar because he does what the team needs him to do. They don't need
Oh,
him
did
to
they say
score.
that? I thought they were hating on Halliburton.
No,
Not that.
Stephen A was hating. But
Oh, okay.
no, the Morris twins were like, no, he's a superstar because he does what they need him to do. They need him to be a point guard, and they need him to close the games. And the reason why they are where they are is because he's playing his role to perfection.
Yeah.
And that's something that a superstar is supposed to do. And I've said this before. In my opinion, like collapsing, when a superstar collapses is when that superstar, it's not when that superstar plays average, what he usually does, is when that superstar plays below average. And I think that in every single game, Halliburton has played either average or played what he usually plays at or above. And I think that's why they are where they are right now. And you could say the same thing about, the Thunder and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Like, the dude is just balling, and, of course, nobody's perfect. He's going to have bad games, but he has played well enough. He's played average or above average in the games that they win, and that's why they win that, and that's why they are where they are right now.
Yeah. It's been. I really have nothing to rebut. You made some really great points, and like I think fundamentally, we have kind of maybe different approaches to specifically the Clippers process. But I really do think that like if the Clippers decide, to go that route, which I mean I don't think that they will, but it needs to happen at some point. I mean, it's very clear that's the winning formula right now, and so it's going to have to happen at some point. It's just what when it happens is the big question. But I want to talk about Halliburton real quick. Like,
Go off.
What's that?
Go off.
Yeah, dude. Like, I've been a big fan of Halliburton for a long time. Chris Paul is one of my favorite players ever. The dude reminds me a little bit of a young Chris Paul, just with his ball security, his leadership, his ability to hit big shots. That's kind of what drew me to him initially. Really, right after he got done with his rookie season, I kind of saw that sort of mold. And it's been really cool to watch him flourish, and granted, like, has there been a little bit of magic there? Like, is he having one of those seasons? Yes. But I think that that's the type of player that he is. Um, I have a hot take about Halliburton. I was telling Rola and the
Whoa.
rest of our fantasy chat, our fantasy basketball chat, that I would disclose it at the end of the season. So I'm gonna wait a little bit on it. But yeah, I'm a huge fan, and obviously I'm a huge fan of Shai. But yeah, with Halliburton, I mean, he's hit game winners in every single series that he's
Yeah.
played. And he's done it, as a guy that, maybe doesn't dominate the whole game from front to start, but like he comes up when the team needs him.
Hmm.
He's vocal. He's ready for the moment. He sets his teammates up for success. Like, he really is a team first player. But he's able to step up when needed. And I've really loved watching it, like, all season. So props to Halliburton. It's really cool to see that version of, or that type of player, go up against the absolute opposite side of things with Shai, where Shai has had singularly, obviously the rest of the Thunder team, Jalen Williams, Cason Wallace, Lou Dort, Chet Holmgren, like Isaiah Hartenstein, Alex Caruso, like, they're so deep, and all of these guys have chipped in big time throughout the season. But at the end of the day, the name of the game for the Thunder has been the dominance of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander this year. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
he is probably a top two player in the league right now. You can make
Easily.
a case that he is the best player in the league right now.
Hmm.
He's had that kind of season. So to have, like, that heliocentric, like, player where it's like everything is predicated off of what of Shai's greatness. Granted, everybody steps up on the Thunder, but at the end of the day, it really it boils down to how great Shai can be. To
Yeah.
the opposite side of things, where it's like Halliburton is kind of sitting on the, not on the sidelines, but he's playing that backseat role, making his teammates better. Feeding a former champion in Siakam, and a really really solid center, particularly in terms of scoring from Miles Turner.
Yeah.
Andrew Nemhard, he's elevated Andrew Nemhard's season. Like, Aaron Nesmith, like, all these guys are stepping up because they have a guy like Halliburton setting the table for them. Like,
Yeah.
it's been really, really cool to watch, and I hate to hear people talk about, and for whatever reason, that's been like the discourse the last couple of years. It's like ratings, and like the NBA isn't what, like, the casual fan wants to see. It's like, who gives a shit, dude? Who gives a shit? Like, this is elite basketball, and I'm
Yeah.
I'm excited to see the end of it. I have Pacers in 6.
Whoa.
Um, I know, I know. I have Pacers in 6. But it can go any way. I'm definitely the underdog in this regard. I'm that big of a believer in Tyrese Halliburton. As it stands right now, guys, the series is tied up 1-1. The Pacers were able to steal a game in Oklahoma off some late game heroics by Tyrese Halliburton yet again. But this series has been really, really fun to watch, and I think that the all encapsulating dialogue is that you have these two young teams that play for each other, that play team basketball behind these great players, and they've earned their spots in the
Yeah.
finals, and I can't wait to see the finish. But yeah, I don't know, what's your predictions for this series,
Dude.
Rola? Because
Uh,
I think
so
I know, but
I will talk about really quick the whole ratings situation, because I think they mentioned, like, oh, game one was the lowest viewed finals game in whatever years.
it's because nobody can watch the games.
Yeah.
Like,
But I also think that, like, a lot of NBA fans are so attached to, that last generation of superstars, LeBron
sure,
James, Steph
sure.
Curry, Kevin Durant, Kawhi, like those types of players, that when they don't see them in, like, in these types of games, I think that people just don't even like care or want to watch because you've mentioned it before. Like a lot of NBA fans aren't basketball fans, so they don't appreciate good basketball. Like that game one was like really good basketball, and then towards the end of the game, we're watching like greatness like being displayed in front of us.
Yeah.
And if you're a fan of sports and you watch that and you don't like it, then like don't watch like I don't know what to tell you. You don't like
Choose a
basketball.
different sport. Yeah.
Exactly.
Like,
But I think that there hasn't been when it comes to talent. I've always believed that the talent in the NBA is skyrocketing every single year. I think every single new class that comes in elevates the talent pool in the NBA. And I've said this before. I think your average NBA player is as talented as Michael Jordan was in his prime. Just
that's a
because
whole nother discussion.
that's a whole
but
nother discussion, but I also think that the average NBA player is significantly more athletic than Michael Jordan was. Just because that's just how that's how you can get to the NBA. That talent level is so high that I think that like genuinely I don't want to say every, but most of the NBA I think that has that athleticism to be able to do moves that they watched Michael Jordan do as when they were kids, do like dunks that Michael Jordan was able to do. I mean, we see Zach LaVine dunking from the free throw line. Like this was years ago. So that's just me. The ratings are going to be the ratings. I think that there needs to be more of a marketing target towards these players, Shai, these younger players, Shai. Well, I don't want to say Jason Tatum because he's not that exciting. But Tyrese Halliburton, for example, I think that he's shown this year that he's someone that they can market, that they can have people interested in. I mean, he did the choking celebration. Like that's something that's cool. That's something that people want to see. So I think that that's something that they can move forward with, and these young players that they can move forward with to create into those Steph Currys and LeBron Jameses of the future.
yeah.
So that's just my thought process. But my prediction, man, I'm a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander stan, bro,
Of course.
because he started his career on the Clippers, and then we traded him for Paul George. Everyone knows the story. But not only that, but while he was on the Thunder for a year, he was kind of Chris Paul's protege.
Yeah.
And I think that he is where he is today because of Chris Paul kind of guiding him in the right direction. And I don't know if
I think it's part of it.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've ever heard of Chris Paul, talking about Shai, but he always talks about how Shai is like a basketball head, and like all he wants to do is play basketball. All he wants to do is talk about basketball, and that was the reason why Chris Paul liked him so much, was because all Shai wanted to do was like pick his brain, figure out how he can get better, and to kind of see where he is, like Shai is today. It's honestly beautiful to see, and especially as a Clipper fan, like I have to root for him.
Of course. Yeah.
Like he's just someone that like I watch. Well, I don't want to say watch grow up, but like I mean, we saw him as a baby on the Clippers, and now he's the best player in the league. It's kind of crazy to think, crazy to see. So I am choosing the OK City, Oklahoma.
That's one way to say it.
The Oklahoma City Thunder in. I don't think the Pacers are winning another game, dude. I'm picking the OKC Thunder in 5 games.
Interesting. Okay. Clipper Nation, Clip Service fans, let us know what you think in the comments section, what your predictions are for this series. Before we get on out of here, I kind of want to segue what Rola said. He touched upon it, Chris Paul taking Shai under his wing. The last thing that I want to touch on is, I know Rola isn't a fan of the old teams and the Clippers running it back and stuff like that, but there has been one last piece of information that I've heard around the league from several different sources, couple firsthand. But there's talk that Chris Paul, he'd been asked, openly, like what his priorities are, for the rest of his career, and he was saying, family. My family lives in LA. I want to be close to my family. I haven't been close to my family for the last 4 years, 5 years or whatever. And there is mutual interest, allegedly, between Chris Paul and the LA Clippers on signing Chris Paul to a 1-year deal, or something team friendly, so that Chris Paul can play one more year for the Clippers and retire on the team that he really truly had his most successful. I mean, obviously he made it to the finals as a Sun, but he was never really a Phoenix Sun. At the end of the day, Rola, if it was for the right price, let's say something close to a veteran minimum, would you want to see Chris Paul on the Clippers for one more year so that he can retire as a Clipper?
Yeah, I would love to see Chris Paul as a Clipper. I think any Clipper fan would love to see Chris Paul as a Clipper again.
Oh, man.
Just because
I would love it.
Yeah, what he did for the city of LA, and him and Blake Griffin kind of put the team on the map. Without them, there is no Clippers in LA, in my opinion, today. So
I mean, you had the knuckleheads, and you had little glimmers of foundational pieces.
I don't think the Clippers would be in Los Angeles today had it not be for Blake Griffin and Chris Paul.
You think they would have moved?
Yeah, moved to another city.
That's fair.
I'm forever grateful for both Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. I think that those two jerseys have to be the first two jerseys retired.
Totally.
Into a dome. So I would love to see Chris Paul as a Clipper. Would be beautiful.
I co-sign that. Obviously, I'm more inclined to bringing in older guys because fuck it for this year. But yeah, no, truly, I would love to see Nico Batum play one more year with the Clippers. Nico Batum's been such a fun part of Clipper history, and then obviously seeing Chris Paul in a Clipper jersey again one more time, kind of right off into the sunset, because that's the one thing I think that's been missing for a lot of Clipper fans is oh, that's our guy. You know what I mean? Obviously Kawhi and PG and stuff like that. They embrace the Clippers to a point. But I think that having Chris Paul, you would kind of blend that line between an older guy, but also you're putting butts in seats. We're staying competitive, but it's also there's that level of fans can really get behind this guy, and this is a Clipper legend, right? So Rola and I talked about it. If Chris Paul, I already knew Rola's answer, but I wanted to ask him so that you guys all heard his answer. But if Chris Paul does come to the Clippers, Rola doesn't live in California currently, but he will have to fly out. We watch a game together, and we will probably both be crying during the game that we go to. If Chris Paul is a Clipper, like I said, one of my favorite, if not my favorite players of all time. One of my favorite, if not my favorite Clippers of all time. Definitely needs his jersey retired. I'm all for it, especially if it's for the right price. I am all for Chris Paul coming back to the Clippers. So Lawrence Frank, if you're listening to this podcast, please make it happen. Make our day. Bring Chris Paul back to the Clippers for one last run. I would love to see it. Clipper Nation, let us know what you think about that too. I'm sure a lot of fans are kind of more on the let's bring Chris Paul back for one more year side of things, but we want to hear what you guys got to say. If you got nothing else to say, Rola, I think that pretty much does it for today. We have the Clippers, well, not just the Clippers. The NBA has the draft coming up on the 25th, I believe. It's a 2-day thing. So first round, I think, is the 25th. Second round is the 26th. The Clippers have the 30th pick in the first round and the 51st pick in the second round. I typically do my draft research about a month before the draft. I watch a lot of the tournament. I like watching out for prospects. There are a lot of prospects that I really, really like in this draft. This draft is going to be extremely deep. I think that there's value to be had at 51 and obviously at 30 for the Clippers. And we'll probably talk about that on our next episode. We'll probably do a draft special. But yeah, a lot to be excited about in this upcoming draft. Like I said, it's very, very deep, and there's a lot of really, really good players, from 1 to 60, really. So we'll talk about all of that and more. But Clipper Nation, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Sorry it's been so long since we last recorded. We got a lot going on. There really hasn't been that much to talk about in terms of Clipper news, but we do our best, guys. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. As Rola said up top, you can watch us on YouTube. Listen to us on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and Deezer. Give us a follow on Instagram and on Twitter at Clip Service Pod. And give us a follow. comment, like, subscribe, give us a rating, all of the above. We really appreciate it. And as Mickey Mouse, who is on my sweater right now, once said, let's go Clippers.
Let's go Clips.
Thanks, guys.